3 years of the URC, and we're guaranteed there's going to be 3 different champions. But who's going to be the third? My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. I guess as a Leinster fan and an Irish fan in general, I should be a bit depressed about the lineup for this final, but it honestly has me excited because, it's 2 of the teams that I've kind of admired from afar, and watched, a fair amount of their games. I'd say, if I think about, the teams in the URC and the percentage of their games that I've watched in the URC, I'd say it pretty much goes Leinster 100%, then the Irish provinces probably about 85 to 90%. Most of the South African teams probably around the 75% mark, and Glasgow round about that level as well. Then the rest of the teams probably somewhere between 50 and 75% of the games, because I've watched in terms of live or as live, because of the URC TV subscription I have, I've watched most weekends at least 6 of the 8 games that are on each round. So I've watched I know I've watched 75% of all of the games in the URC this season. So for most of the teams, it's going to be in around there. Obviously a little bit higher for Irish teams, a little bit low for others, but I've enjoyed every minute of it, honestly. And these are the 2 teams that I really like, and I find it like there's a lot of parallels between them as well, which we maybe talk about a little bit later on in the video. But also, I've got, you sometimes see me wearing my jerseys for the the Irish provinces and stuff, because I over the last year or so I've acquired a jersey for each of the provinces, and now I'm kind of thinking, well, I want to get a jersey for each of the URC teams. That's my kind of ultimate goal. It's going to take a while to do it because I have to save money to get these jerseys, especially ones of teams that aren't as easy to get, like in the Irish ones. I was able to walk into a shop and buy them, whereas these other ones kind of have to get them online and pay, sometimes pay more than the shirt is actually cost to get it shipped as well. But I'm going to make this promise, because I know this year I want to get 2 more shirts. And as I said, these are 2 outside Ireland. These are 2 of the teams that I really like watching. And because of that, I'm going to make this promise that whoever wins this game over the summer, I'm going to make sure that I get their jersey to have it ready for next season. It probably will be an old jersey by then, but at least it'll be a jersey for that team. So that's my promise, is that I'm going to source a jersey of the winning team. And then the other thing that I'm hoping is that I was very lucky, that my wife got me the Ulster yellow jersey, which I absolutely adore, for my birthday / Christmas, because the 2 of them are pretty much right on top of each other. And I'm hoping that I can maybe convince her to get me the jersey then of the runner-up of the final as well. So hopefully by the end of this year, I'll have jerseys for both of these teams. That would be I'd be delighted with that, and I'd love to wear a few more jerseys as well on the videos. But we got that out of the way. So what's going to happen in this video? Well, it's a high-level preview of the final, which means that we're not going to talk too much about individual players. We're going to do that probably on Friday when teams come out, and it just makes more sense. There's no point in talking about players who aren't going to play, even though for a lot of the sides you could probably name most of the 23 that are going to be there, but it's best to wait and see what actual 23s are picked, and then it's easier then as well to go down through them just in a methodical manner. So it is, and what we're going to talk about is how the teams got to where they are in terms of knockout stages. Then we're going to look at how the teams have done in previous knockouts, the last 2 years of the URC, and then we're going to look at kind of their form, and also so formulas like the last 7 games, and then also, run down quickly through each of their seasons as well to see how they kind of plotted their way through the season as well. And then in there, we're obviously going to bring up some other things as well, connected to the final and these two teams playing each other. Okay, so let's start with the basics of this particular game. So we have the details here. If I pull it up, come on, I had it there a second ago. Here we are. Okay, so it's Vodacom Bulls versus Glasgow Warriors, or Bulls versus Glasgow. How I'd say it. And again, I always find it weird with the South African teams that I know that the Bulls and their sponsor is Vodacom, but it feels like there should be a place name in there somewhere as well. But that's the name that everybody knows them by. So, but this one is on Saturday, 22nd of June. It's a 5 p.m. kickoff. That's my local time. So in Ireland, I think South Africa is maybe an hour ahead. I'm not sure. I don't know what way their clocks work in summertime, but I think it might be 6 p.m. But don't take my word for that. If you're in South Africa, look up the time yourself and make sure that you're not going, Mark told me it started at 6 and it started at 4 and I missed the whole bloody game. So make sure you check that out. But definitely, if you're watching in Ireland, it's a 5 p.m. kickoff. They haven't actually said where it is. It seems like SuperSport is like where it's been shown, but SuperSport normally has it on. I don't think any of the Irish stations are showing it, which is a pity because it's like the final of the competition. And for me, they probably think, well, there's no Irish teams in this, so therefore we're not going to get great viewing figures. But still, put the bloody final on because it's the final of the competition. You know what I mean? Like let people watch and let people enjoy watching the Bulls versus Glasgow and just watching it as a neutral or picking a side and rooting for them or wherever it is. But I still think, it's a brilliant final. It's going to be a great game, and why not, put it on there for people to see. But it's at Loftus Versfeld, and it is the second seeds versus the fourth seeds. So that's kind of our high level stuff. Now let's look at their knockouts this year. So starting with the Bulls, the home team. And let's pull up the correct year. But that's here. There we are. Okay. So the Bulls started with that 30 points to 23 win over Benetton. And, I thought in that one, they were always kind of that bit ahead. And same really with Leinster, that once they establish a lead, they never really relinquish it. I know Leinster equalised a couple of times, but Leinster never got ahead of them. And I think Bulls in both games, in the quarterfinal against Benetton and then that win against Leinster, I thought they managed the games pretty well. So quarterfinals, they beat Benetton 30 points to 23, and then the semi-finals 25 points to 20 against Leinster. And in both games, I was impressed with the game management of the Bulls in that one. Then Glasgow, their route is fairly similar, honestly, like 27 points to 10 against the Stormers. The game was competitive early on, but then Glasgow took a hold of the game towards the end and again managed it into a decent win. And it did the same against Munster as well. Game was fairly tight, but that 7-point lead looked very secure, honestly, in those final minutes. There was no inkling that Munster had it in them to really, overhaul that, or well, they wouldn't have overhauled it, would have just equalised it and, sent it to extra time. So very similar kind of routes in terms of how they manage the games. And even though their respective, games were fairly close, especially their semi-finals, both teams looked very comfortable towards the end. Neither of them was kind of relying on, last-ditch defense or anything like that, or winning a crucial turnover to keep the opposition out. Both teams played in the opposition's half of the field for the most part, whether they had possession or the opposition had possession. That's where they made sure that the game kind of ended, and it felt, fairly comfortable insofar as one score victories can be. Okay, so let's talk fairly briefly about the semi-finals, because I've already got a review of the semi-finals and I've got a review of each of the semi-finals as well. So 3 separate videos, about 2 hours of me talking about the semi-finals. So if you want more on that, go and look at that there. I will say even in this one, I'm not talking about the referee. It's my policy not to talk about referees, and I'm not going to break it just because some people have asked me what did I think of the referee. I'm not getting into it. That's as much as you're going to get me to talk about the referee in this. But let's start with this one. So Leinster started the scoring. Peterson's in the bin. Lowe gets over to score. Try converted, so they're ahead. Then Bulls hit back through Houston. Lovely line he picked and came onto the ball at pace. Converts his own try. Then into the second half, we have a penalty from Houston, and we also have then a try from Peterson, and this was who was it? It was Voxel, right? Voxel breaks down to the left. He kicks the ball through. Peterson has the pace to get there before any of the covering defence, and he dots down to score. Really well worked try, exploiting that space that's there against the Leinster defence out wide. Houston converts it, and it feels like the Bulls now are in control. Leinster do hit back with a Doris try that was from a tap penalty. Sheehan tapped it, went for the line, recycled quickly. Doris gets over with a couple of latches, and it's converted. Then we have a penalty from Byrne that squared up the game. Houston puts the Bulls back ahead from the tee, and then Byrne squares up again with another penalty. Then Peterson, it was let me remember. It was Papier, right? Papier put up a lovely box kick. Peterson beats, I think it was Larmer in the air, and collects the ball. And the way he collected it as well, the way he landed, it meant he kept his momentum, and he just sailed over to score what was the winning try. Going from getting yellow carded to then scoring 2 tries. Brilliant performance from him. But that's how the Bulls got here in terms of their semi-final. Then for the Glasgow semi-final, Munster putting on a lot of pressure early on. Richie Gray goes to the bin because of repeated infringements close to the line from Glasgow. Crowley decides to pop over the 3 points because Munster have been down there for ages and haven't got any reward from it. But it was a scant reward, really. They only got 3 points from that pressure and the yellow card period as well. Then we had the first try of the game, and it came from a mix-up in midfield from Munster. It was Nankerville and Frisch mixed up. Ball goes to deck, Stain gets it, and he's in behind and away to score. Gets converted, and now Glasgow are in the lead. From here then, into, or just before half-time, Ferguson, he gets a yellow card. So second yellow card for Glasgow in the game. Into the second half then, just at the end of the yellow card period, Glasgow busts the line. I think it was Hugh Jones, right? Hugh Jones, mazy run, gets in behind, draws the cover, and puts Cancellieri away in the corner. That's converted as well. And then, at that point, then Glasgow have a 4-point lead. Then Horn slots another penalty, and Glasgow well ahead in that one then, in terms of 7 points felt like a lot we talked about how they managed the end of the game. Nankivell got red carded, very rightly so as well, for a dangerous clear out towards the end, about 5 minutes or a little bit over to go. And Glasgow looked very comfortable. And both teams, the Bulls and Glasgow, looked to be on top, in the scrum towards the end of the game. Munster were on top in the scrum in their game, but then Glasgow turned around when the bench came on, and then the Bulls were just on top throughout the whole game. And I thought both teams did well at disrupting the opposition line out too. So it's going to be interesting, that matchup, given that they both were able to do that against their opponents. Can they do it to each other is obviously going to be the thing from there. So that's how the teams, reach the final. Next, we're going to look at how the teams have gone in previous years for the final. So we're going to look at, first of all, back to last year. So in last year's one, we start with the Bulls. So the Bulls, they went out in the quarterfinals. They lost 33 points to 21 against the Stormers. And, the same for Glasgow. Glasgow went out in the quarterfinals too. They were at home at Scotstoun, and it was 5 points to 14. Jordan got a red card in that one. I think that's about 25 minutes, I'm pretty sure, in that one. So, and it was one, even with the red card, I still felt that, they wouldn't have been happy with their performance, because we have seen teams overcoming red cards and winning, but it just felt like it wasn't there for them. And, I think this year they've kind of turned around that hoodoo that they've had in knockout games in this competition. But eventually then the grand final, Munster beat the Stormers 19 points to 14. And a bit of kind of, encouragement for Glasgow. I think the fact that, Munster had to go away in each of the games. Obviously, it was Glasgow were the first team that they knocked out. Then they beat Leinster in the semi-final, and then finally going down to South Africa and winning against the Stormers in the grand final. So they showed, that it can be done. So there's a trailblaze, as it were, for Glasgow if they're looking at, how they're going to do it as well. Not necessarily, copying the way Munster play or anything like that. Just the fact that knowing that it can be done sometimes can be a G up for a team. Then if we look back to the first year of the URC, so the 2022 knockout stages. So again, we're going to start with Glasgow this time, because they go out first. So Glasgow lost their quarterfinal to Leinster very heavily, 76 points to 14, and that really was a chastening experience for Glasgow. But as often happens with games like this, that would have been one of the bedrocks that what we're seeing from Glasgow now was built on. The what came out of that in terms of looking at how they performed so badly would have fed into how they progressed from there, both last season and this season as well. Then the Bulls were actually on the same side of the draw. First of all, they beat the Sharks 30 points to 27. And then they go away to the RDS against, a Leinster team who just hockeyed Glasgow, and they pull off a brilliant win, 27 points to 26. So then they're in the grand final. It's against the Stormers, and they lose that one very narrowly, 18 points to 13. So the Bulls have experience of, the occasion that is the grand final of the URC, and that will stand to these players, I think, in terms of preparation this week and just handling the occasion itself, and just worrying about the game. That's definitely going to help them. But something to note as well with the Bulls is that if we look at at who they lost to in 2022, as I said, they get to the grand final, they lose to the Stormers, and then in 2023, they go out in the quarterfinals, but they also lose to the Stormers. So the Bulls have only ever lost in the URC knockout game to the Stormers so far. I know it's only 2 years of history, but still, there can be something in that as well. Maybe they're going to think, well, only the Stormers can beat us, and the Stormers are out. So therefore, not necessarily we're going to win, but it's a good omen, at least for them, I think. And that's what I think sometimes you have to look at. I don't honestly believe in like lucky rabbit's foot or omens or anything like that, but I do believe in the effect of stuff like that. If a team, we've seen it all the time, if a team feels that more comfortable around certain things, or that maybe it's their year, or the opposite where they feel like everybody is writing them off and therefore they want to, prove a point or something. Those kind of things definitely have an effect on how teams perform on big occasions, because generally I think for a final, you don't want to overthink it. You want to have a few kind of points that are there in your head and you're thinking, okay, that's what I'm focusing on, that's what it's all about, and I'm just going to go out and play my game, and I have my motivation there now to go out and hopefully get the job done for my team. I think both teams are going to be looking at it from that perspective. So that's a kind of look at the previous knockout stages for both of these teams. As I said, Bulls with some previous experience in a final, not yet having had the experience of lifting the trophy itself, but I think the occasion, having understood the occasion or gone through the occasion before, that will stand to them, I think. I think for Glasgow, obviously a whole new experience for them, but what a great experience as well. Win or lose, I think it's going to be fantastic for those players and for the fans who are lucky enough to go. So that's that. Next, then we are going to look at the form of the teams as they've reached here. So first one up is the Bulls. So the Bulls have won 6 of the last 7 games. That's a great run. Obviously 2 of those are knockout games, but they still have 4 wins on the trot coming in to this as well. So carrying that form in really well. And it's something, again, that I've talked about before, that the Bulls seem to be really good at managing, the kind of the peak of their season, where they seem to come into form just at the right time, coming into knockout stages. They build that confidence, getting a run of wins, and then it just kind of helps with that momentum going through knockouts. Glasgow, they've won 5 of the last 7, and they've got 3 wins on the trot, including 2 knockout games. So, they've been building a run through the knockouts, really. And, so obviously one of these teams is going to come out with a win, and one's going to come out with a loss out of this. But in terms of the form, at least it seems to be in favor of the Bulls. So now we're going to have a quick look back through each of their seasons and kind of pick out some highlights, or some lowlights as well for each of the teams. So again, we're going to start with the home team, the Bulls. So we've got 18 rounds of the regular season and then knockouts as well. We won't dwell too much on knockouts because we've already covered those, but we will mention them at least. But Bulls in round 1 start off really well, 63 points to 21 win against the Scarlets, and just kind of a statement of intent for the season. Then they go on tour in Europe. First up is a 26-19 defeat to Ulster, and that was Ulster before they went off the rails, and Dan McFarland ended up leaving, because of how badly their season tanked. But at this stage of the season, there was no sign of that happening really for Ulster. So, and that was a very competitive game between those two as well. Then round 3, to go away to Zebre, 54 points to 29 against the Zebre team, who this season have been very competitive at home. So to win that comfortably against them, was a good sign. Then round 4, 18-12 away at Cardiff Arms Park against the Cardiff Rugby team, who at that point of the season were showing really good signs that this is, a decent crop of young players. They were in good form as well. So again, that's a really good win for the Bulls to get. Then round 5, a defeat, 31 points to 23 against Edinburgh. But again, it's not that far away, and Edinburgh were in good form around that time as well. Then back to Loftus, 53 points to 27 win, very comfortable against Connacht. Then another comfortable win, 44-10 against the Sharks. Then we have they go on the road in South Africa, 26 points to 20, close defeat against the Stormers. That was around the time when the Stormers were kind of much lower in the table, and they were trying to push to get into the playoff places. And it's when that was really around the start of the Stormers going on a run themselves was that win against the Bulls. Then back to Loftus, 30 points to 28 against the Lions. But then in round 10, they complete the double over the Lions, 25 points to 10 at Emirates Airlines Park. Round 11 then, they get revenge against the Stormers, 40 points to 22 at Loftus. Then back up to Europe, round 12, 31 points to 10. Pretty comfortable win against the Dragons. And at that stage, the Bulls were looking good. They were chasing down Leinster and Glasgow at the top of the table. It looked like maybe they were going to be the team who would finish top of the log, given the momentum they had coming into that. Then, just give me a second, because I'm going to just close this door behind me. Thank you, Win, for blowing the door open. Right, so, yeah, they had nice momentum coming into this, but then probably for me, this was Leinster's peak in the URC this year. 47 points to 14, Leinster win. But we didn't see any other performance really up to this level from Leinster the whole rest of the season. Round 14 then, 22 points to 27. They lose at home at Loftus against Munster. That was the first and to date the only defeat that they've had against a European team at Loftus in this competition. So that's something for Glasgow to bear in mind as well, as the fact that they've only ever been beaten once at Loftus by a European team in the URC. So it's going to be an epic win if they do actually get it. Given that it's a final, it's already going to be epic anyway. But you see that the scale of the task really that faces them going there, with the Bulls with that amazing record at Loftus. Then round 15, restore the pride, 61 points to 24 win against Ospreys. Round 16, then 40 points to 34 against Glasgow. So this will be one where they'll draw confidence from, certainly, because the Bulls had the game pretty much well won, and Glasgow scored some tries towards the end that made it look closer than it actually was. But the Bulls were in control for the most part of that game. Round 17 then, another comfortable win, 56 points to 34 against Benetton. Then they pop over to the Sharks, Kings Park, 26 points to 14 to round off their regular season. And then we talked about, the quarterfinal win, 30 points to 23 against Benetton. And then that brilliant performance against Leinster, 25 points to 20 in their semi-final. Okay, so that's their season to date. Then we look at Glasgow. So Glasgow in round one start with a real statement of intent, 43 points to 25 against Leinster, just saying, listen, you may have been like top dogs on the log for the last couple of seasons, but we're coming to challenge you, and you better take note. And Leinster really didn't take note, honestly. They should have done. Round two, then they go away to Connacht. Then 34 points to 26. Would have been disappointed with that, especially against a Connacht team who were so up and down all the way through the season. Real Jekyll and Hyde team for me this season. Round three then, a really nice win, 20 points to 9 against the Stormers. One of those games where, not a ton of tries scored, but really in control of the game. And that's what you want to see from teams that have real ambitions to lift the trophy. Round four then, they go into Ospreys, 31 points to 23. Round five, a decent win, 26 to 12 against the Benetton team, who at that point of the season were one of the form teams in the league. Round six, 33 points to 20 against an Ulster team that are starting. I think that was around the time when Ulster started to go off the rails a little bit, but still a decent win. Round seven then, 40 points to 29, lost to Munster. They scored a few tries in the game, but they conceded way too many points. And, I think from there they realised defence, you can't just go all attack. You have to have the defence to go with it as well. Round eight then, round 8 and 9 actually is the home derby. So at Scotstoun, they beat Edinburgh 22-10, but then Edinburgh get revenge 19-14 at Murrayfield in the return. Round 10, comfortable win, 40 points to 7 against the Dragons. Then they go away to Benetton, 19 points to 9. That was a really good win. Again, it was one of those ones where they managed the game very well, I felt. Round 12, a close one, 17 points to 13 against Cardiff. And, this was, again, Cardiff, one of their better performances of the season. And, Glasgow maybe a little bit off in that one, but they still had enough to win. And again, that kind of builds confidence. Even when you're not firing, if you're still pulling out the wins, that really can be something to put in the bank to store for later. Then 45 points to 3 away to Scarlets at Parky Scarlets. Round 14, 21 points to 10 against the Sharks of Scotstoun. Then they go away to Zebre, and a very comfortable win away to Zebre again. 40 points to 9. Again, Zebre, a lot of teams got run close by Zebre over in Stadio Sergio Lanfranchi, but both the finalists handled that trip fairly well, probably better than most of the teams in the URC. Then round 16 is that one that's going to be, weighing on both teams' minds, I think, coming into this, is because it's so recent as well. That 40 points to 34 defeat against the Bulls. They're going to have to, start the game better than they did in that one and stay in it. Is going to be the thing for the Warriors, I think. Round 17 then, 44 points to 21 against the Lions. So not brilliant for the Warriors. And I believe as well the Warriors against the Bulls, they got 2 bonus points, which was enough to just about sneak them to the top of the log. But I think, they would have gone down to South Africa kind of confident, probably not thinking they're going to beat the Bulls, but they would have expected is the wrong word, but they would have hoped for, I think, a better performance against the Lions. The Lions, though, at that time were chasing playoffs themselves, and it looked like they were really motivated for that game. But that was where I think Glasgow's tilt at kind of top seed ultimately deserted them. Then round 18, 38 points to 26 against a very spirited Zebre team in their final game of the season. Warriors really had to dig it out on that one to get the win. Then we talked about their quarterfinal win, 27-10 against the Stormers, and then that fantastic performance, 17-10 against Munster. So that's how both team seasons have gone. Both with a lot of kind of positives coming from the season as well. Game management to the fore, I think, for both of these, and that's going to be very key again at Loftus on Saturday. Who can manage the game well? Set piece is going to be massive. Both. Again, this Warriors, they struggled early on against the Munster scrum, and then when they brought on their bench, they turned things around. But the Bulls are absolutely completely on top against Leinster, and so you have to think then that Glasgow, they're going to have to try and get some kind of parity in that scrum early on, or at least make it so that the scrum isn't going to be a huge Achilles heel for them. Then in the line out, Glasgow, excellent line out, but the Bulls very good at disrupting as well. So how that goes, who's going to get on top of that one, and especially making sure that your initial kind of your first few throws, it's actually going to be straight, because that we've seen that be an issue with a lot of hookers this year, where maybe out of the first 3 or 4 throws, maybe there's 1 to 2 of them that isn't straight, and you're giving up good field position, and potentially then if your team was on top of the scrum, you're giving away a penalty as well. So how that goes, I think, is going to be important. Set piece, always important in rugby, but I think with these two teams, even though they both love throwing the ball around as well, I still think they both have very solid set pieces, and who can get on top of those is going to be important. Also, for my money, the two best maul attacks in the URC going head to head. So that's going to be fascinating to see. First of all, how they do on maul attack, but also how each team does on maul defense as well. So I wouldn't be surprised, to see, Matthews, Grobler, and Van der Merwe maybe all getting on the score sheet at some point during the game, because that's how big I think the maul attack is for these teams. And if it's going to be a tight game as well, it could come down to who can get their maul over the line, in a crucial period during the game. The other thing to note as well is, even though maybe would it been a final, it's going to be a little bit, in terms on the lower scoring end. It doesn't have to be. Finals don't have to be. It could end up like 50 points to 49 or something for all I know. But kind of if nerves are there, or teams are just trying to stay in the game rather than trying to go out there and just completely win the game and taking lots of risks. And I think both teams are probably going to be a little more risk averse, and that's why I think that the score is going to be down. But on attack, Bulls 88 tries for the season is number 1 in the URC, and the Warriors 80 tries in the season I think is number 3. So 2 of the top 3 try scorers across the entire season. So if the game is open, expect to see some tries, but not just tries, some really good tries as well, because the way these two teams play, they obviously do have that set piece, they do have that maul attack, but when the opportunity is there, they can both run the ball, and move it. They're both really good at support lines for the ball carrier as well, to keep that ball alive, to make sure that any breaks in behind, they've got a better chance of actually converting it into a score, rather than just a line break that maybe ends up with maybe a knock on or a turnover from the other team if they get isolated or whatever. But I think both these teams do that really well. Once they get in behind, it's your scramble has to be excellent to kill the move, and if it isn't, you're probably going to concede a try. So that's another thing to look out for between these guys. And yeah, it's just a massively exciting game really for me, and it's hard to call it, but there's a couple of factors. Again, first of all, the fact is that Loftus, you've got to give an edge to the Bulls in that respect. The next one is the Bulls have that previous experience of a final. I think that's definitely going to stand to them. And then obviously the fact that it's going to be at altitude as well may have an effect on Glasgow, especially if it's a tight game in the second half. You might see the Bulls just naturally being able to cope with it a little better than them. So you got those in their favor. I think on Glasgow's side of things, then you got the fact that they seem to be playing with greater confidence than I've seen them before in knockout games, and sometimes that's the final element that's needed for a team is that confidence to realize, hey, we can play our natural game against these guys. They're fantastic players, they're a fantastic team, but we're not bad ourselves, and maybe we can actually do something against them. And I've talked about it with Glasgow before, is that Glasgow and Scotland where they talk like that, but then the performance doesn't match it, and it's sometimes it's hard to explain, but I don't think it's a bad thing that they're talking like that, because I think that's the way a team needs to talk, is that you give respect to the opposition. I'm a big kind of fan of always respect your opposition, no matter who they are, and no matter how, whatever bookies say or pundits or whatever, always respect your opposition. For me, is number one, right? And talk about their strengths, but also talk about your own strengths, and how you feel you're going to go. And for Glasgow, I think they've been saying the right things, but they haven't been delivering. And now it feels like they're still saying the right things, but they're delivering on them as well. Doesn't mean they're going to deliver in the final, but it's nice to see them with that confidence. And sometimes that's all it takes. It just takes 1 or 2 wins, where in the past games have gone against them, and suddenly, oh no, it actually worked this time. Like, okay, so let's stick to the plan, because now they know that their whatever game plan they have has worked for them previously. And therefore, when it comes to kind of tight situations towards the end of the game, there's less panic in a team, and that can be massive in a final. But I think on both of these teams, they both look so composed in their semi-finals. I'd be surprised, and maybe I will be surprised, but I'd be surprised if the game was kind of decided by a mistake towards the end. I think, it's more. I think it's more likely that a team is going to win the final rather than a team losing the final, if that makes any sense. And again, I could be wrong, but that it just feels like both teams are going in with decent confidence. But in terms of calling a winner, I've got to back the Bulls in this one, because again, just the fact that it's at home just gives them that edge that I don't think that all the positives that Glasgow do have coming in is going to be enough to negate that. So I'm going to go for a Bulls one in this one. I'm going to go for a very exciting final, and I think a very close final in the end as well.